Hello, my name is Sarah Rowley, and I'm going to be doing a presentation on CSS Cascade and Inheritance. So first, what is CSS? CSS stands for Cascading Styling Sheet, and what it does is it describes to our browser how we want our HTML displayed on our web page. This allows us to make nice looking web pages and also allows us to have fun. Excuse me. So we do this by using selectors and declarations. So a selector would be the tag that we want to change. So for example, a div or an h1 tag. And the declaration is how we want to change it. So we could take a selector of an h1 tag and give it the declaration of blue, or the color blue, and would make that h1 tag, everything in it, to be blue. Next, one of the most important parts of a cascading styling sheet is the cascading. So another way of saying cascading is the series of sequence, which basically means that the order that you put your CSS in is extremely important, and it can really mess up your page and the way it looks and be super confusing if you don't fully understand what cascading means. So something important about cascading is the specification. So the specification tells the browser which declarations are more important. So if you have a selector of a div and you give it a declaration of blue, and then like halfway down your CSS you have another selector of div and you give it the declaration of red, that's going to really confuse the browser, and it's just going to take whatever's at the very end, because the last item takes precedence when they have the same specification. But if you want to have two different divs, different colors, then you need to use an ID or a class, because that will give your specification a boost. So let's say a normal div has a specification of 1. Never mind. 2. Sorry. So normal div has a specification of 2. But if you give it an ID, that's going to give it a specification of 1 and tell the browser, hey, this one that has an ID, this one overrides the other. So for example, right here, my very top, I have all of my header tags and I want them all to be red. So on the right, I have my header and I expect it to be red, but it's black. Why is it black? Because right below that on my CSS, I have the same selector of h1 and I want that one, and I tell that one to be black. So it's going to override the first one and just make everything black. That's not fun. But at the very, very bottom, I have an ID for an h1 tag called blue header, and I tell it to be blue. So that one's blue. Yay! Now if I put that ID selector at the very top, it's still going to make it blue. Yes, I have an h1 at the very bottom saying, well, in that case, I have an h1 at the very bottom saying to make all the h1s black. But since it has an ID, it's saying, hey, ignore all the other ones and make this one blue, just this one, because it's an ID. You always want to use an ID for one item, one tag. Never use the same ID for 2 tags. That's when you would want to use a class. Otherwise, it's too confusing. Next, I want to talk about inheritance. So, just as we as people inherit different aspects of ourselves from our parents, it's the same with HTML. So let's say we have a div tag. That's going to be our parent element. And inside of that div tag, we have 2 paragraph tags. And those are the div tags children. So any declaration that we give to that div tag is children elements, those 2 paragraph tags are going to inherit it. So let's say I give this div tag the declaration to be blue. What color are the p tags, its children tags, going to be? Well, they're going to be blue because they inherited it from the parent tag. Now, there are ways to control the inheritance, and that's using declarations. So here are 3 declarations that you can use. The inherit tag, it basically just turns on the inheritance and tells this element to use whatever its parent's declaration is. And then we have the initial declaration, which tells the browser to take whatever its default is, and that's what this element is going to show up as. So ignore the parent and whatever it should be inheriting and just make it the default. Now the onset, this resets the property to its natural value, which means that it's going to be the property that it should naturally inherit. For instance, if it's naturally going to be inherited, then it's going to act like an inherit declaration. Otherwise, it will not act like an initial declaration, do whatever the browser's default is. So here's an example. So here I have a body tag, and I told it to be the color red. And then I have a paragraph tag that I've given the ID paragraph 1, and I told it to have the declaration of initial. So I told this that I wanted everything inside the body tag to be red. But then I also said, hey, this very first paragraph, I want it to be whatever the browser's default is. And browser's default is black. So that's why this first one is black. It's because that's what the initial declaration is saying. It says do whatever the browser's default is. But the second paragraph, it doesn't have an ID. So it's going to inherit whatever color its parent has given it to, or its grandparent in this case. Because this P tag, this very last one that doesn't have an ID, is the child of the div tag. But the div tag is the child of the body tag. So, that being said, it's going to inherit down the line. So I've told this body to be red. So that's going to be inherited by the div. And the things inside the div is going to inherit that, except for the ones that I've given an ID to. So that being said, what color is this P tag going to be? And I want you guys to answer that in the comments and tell me why. And if you have any questions, let me know, and I will answer them the best I can. Thanks for listening. Bye.